Good morning all. Welcome to the combined Rangi Joint Management Committee and Harding Park Committee Council meeting. I'll begin the proceedings with Klakia, so let us pray. Kia tua tēnei mātou whanua nei te ino I kia koe, kia tata mai koe kia mātou I tēnei ata. I roi tēnei kia koe manaki hoki a mātou kaupapa, I ngā kōrero I whāna hoki ki tēnei kaupapa I wānga ni a tātou. Nā reira, ko iu kai te hoki tō tātou ariki. Amene, mauri ora kia tātou. So we go to 1.2 of the agenda and call for any apologies.
Georgina Connolly.
Georgina Connolly. Someone move the apology be accepted. Thank you, Karen. Seconded. William. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
No. Carried. .3 of the agenda, confirmation of the agenda. Would someone move that the agenda be confirmed? Councillor Peter Wesley and Robert. Moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
No. That's carried. Conflict of interest declaration 1.4. Anyone have any conflict of interest that they would like to declare?
Perhaps you, Mr. Chair. You've got a conflict.
The submission is going to be made on behalf of the Davao Museum, Whare Taonga Tunatahi. I declare that be a conflict of interest declaration. Any other conflicts of interest? If not, we'll move to item 2, which is confirmation of minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of May 2022. Would someone move that the minutes of the 17th of May be confirmed? Councillor Peter Wesley, seconded by William Wright. We'll move that the minutes of the 17th of May be confirmed. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Now move to the submissions, the hearing reports, and would someone move that these submissions be received? Councillor Joyce, seconded by Robert. Thank you.
What in the gallery? We've got 7 submitters who'd like to be heard, but I'm not sure they're all here, so we'll work down the list and have a look here up and speak for 5 minutes on time map for you. So it's good for everybody, and we get a reminder of it. I'll just give you a little sound at 4 minutes, just so you know what I'm going to go. 5 minutes for you to speak. And the committee has an opportunity to ask questions to clarify anything that they haven't understood in your submission. Committee, the important thing about the hearings is that you're here to listen and just understand what the submitters are saying, discussions we have about it and deliberations. Just getting a good handle on what they're sharing with us today. Yeah. If we haven't got, we can just see who we have at the moment. Is Callum McLaren here? Yet, tailor-made tours. Davao Museum. Whare Taonga or Tunatahi. Like Rangi.
It would be here that I would remove myself from.
You don't have to for hearings, you're allowed to listen. Oh,
I mean, from the chief.
don't have to for hearings. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Raymond Sills. I'm the Vice President of Davao Museum. Ross, our President, wasn't able to be here today. So I'm just going to talk to our submission. The first thing, may I sit down? The first area is that we want to talk about is a security issue that we believe, and that's that we believe that the gates should be locked at night. Now, they have been in the past. One of the main reasons is that we have camper vanners staying up at the park overnight. More and more of them are single vanners and quite often women, and we just feel that they would be safer if they could be locked in at night and have some access through the gate in the case of an emergency. So that's one of ours. The other one is the traffic flow. So we've got quite a lot of people who visit the museum are disabled, elderly, don't like walking too far. So it's quite a distance to walk if they have to park their cars in the car park and walk down if there was no road access in the front of the museum. And related to that is the committee always believed that if the road was running in the other direction, anti-clockwise, then the visitors could be dropped off at the door, the buses could pull up there and then go and park. So that's always been our stand for many years, that as far as we're concerned, as a museum is concerned, that's the way that would suit best for our visitors. Going further into the road, if the road was blocked off at the car park, we'd have to have some means of getting into the lighthouse for a function or for a wedding, funerals. So there would still have to be a way of getting vehicles down there and a turnaround place at the bottom. Issue, but in some ways is the masts. Now we understand that because the masts are on our licence to occupy land, it's up to us to decide what happens to them at the moment. But very strongly we believe that they should stay. So that's one of the things that we would support, even though they're on our land and we have to say, we still believe that that's where they belong for many reasons. One of them is we have a rainbow warrior display in the museum, and it's related to those masts outside. Now, we do understand that they need upgrading, the lights do, and we'd very strongly support any move in that direction, or any support from other groups or other people in helping us do that. And the other one is just, fourth point that I'd like to talk about is just, we'd like some system of being able to report maintenance issues to the committee. Without having to go through a whole lot of meetings, and we just like a clear line of communication between us and someone who can help us if we notice anything that needs doing around the park. And that's all, thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Any points of clarification they wish to? Councillor Rangi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one thing we like to make the point about the Rainbow Warrior Mast, and it's also been combined with more obviously needing to have some upgrading, lighting, etc. Do you have at your museum budget something for the claim?
No, we don't. Not specifically in our budget currently.
So there's not been any cost for the museum for any maintenance to date on those masts.
Just from memory, most of the work that has been done, especially the replacement of the lights to LED lights, that was funded by a local person. I don't think we've done any fundraising for that. Now, in the very distant past, of course, the museum paid to have the erected, and I think they got funding for that too, but I'm not quite sure. That's
Basically relying on sort of external funders or.
Yeah. Yes, very much so, yeah.
We apply for,
Any other questions?
we apply for funding, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Any other questions from the committee? Yes, Ross.
Just on the Rainbow Warrior Masts, there's quite a collection of other stuff from the Rainbow Warrior, is that correct?
Yes, on display. We've got quite a comprehensive display in the museum.
A photographic display?
No, artifacts as well.
Oh, yeah, what kind?
We've got the clock that was on the museum, it was on the Rainbow Warrior. We've got a life belt. What else have we got? Lights and lamps.
Right, so there's a specific area in the museum dedicated, okay.
We've just received from England a sail block that has been donated from an Englishman who bought it at the fire sale, and it's come back to
Okay,
where it belongs, basically, with the other things from the Rainbow Warrior.
so just on that, would there be any consideration of moving the masts to a different area in the park?
A committee at the moment is saying, you know, we've got a choice if we're saying no, because we would want them to remain there. But we would be open to consideration within the park, I would say, speaking on their behalf, but not removing them from the hill. Where they are, of course, they're seen from a wide range of parts of the area.
Can be seen for miles, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then just the consideration of the view out from the museum, out from the Lighthouse Function Centre is obviously the Rainbow Warriors, the Masts, the front and centre of that. So consideration of moving them for that reason, it might be worth considering.
Thank you. William.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ma'am, for comprehensive submission. You initially made the comment about, and I'm interested in this, locking the gates at night and for, safety reasons, and look, I get that. How would, if somebody wanted to leave the park at night or there was an emergency, what's your sort of thinking? How would we do, or how would you deal with that?
I don't know that it would be our issue to deal with, but by using, we would be happy as a museum to give a code to people who are staying, that sort of thing. It's we wouldn't be responsible to set up the locking mechanism, but yes, we could do that. So that if they need to get out quickly, they can. And also, of course, we have functions there in the night, so that we'd have to deal with that as well, that those people would have to be able to get in and out after hours. But it was locked before, and I think in those days people had a phone number they could call, and that was the security people. But a simple code would probably work, as it does in modern times, in other parks.
Yeah, in your submission, you mentioned that there can be some unruly groups that go up there during the night. Has there been any safety issues, with the residents or the campers?
Yeah, they have. Yes, personally, I've had two in the last, I'm not there all the time, but mentioned in the last, say, 6 months. One was a couple who, people were banging on their van. The other one was just, they were just annoyed because people were racing their cars around the loop. So they didn't come near them, but it was just the noise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your presentation. My question's about the roadway, and I hear you when you say that it's a long way, well, walking from the existing car park to the front entrance. Would there be any consideration around moving the front door? Like moving it closer to the car park? Because in my mind, I can visualise that site and see how that might be possible.
We've talked about this in the past. There was a concept being developed about 2 or 3 years ago. We had the entrance through the Aratapu Library. What we really would like is a beautiful entranceway. Yeah. Really, and one of the submitters mentioned that, or a couple did. So we'd be open to anything like that. The other thing is you have to have bollards, and all that is quite complicated. If you had to let some cars through, so that they can go and turn around and come back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, members of Davao Museum. Whare Taonga Tūnatahi, thank you for your presence today and your submissions that you presented to us.
Thank you.
Alan McLaren here. Element tools. Old Golf Course Road resident. Old Golf Course Road resident.
Golf Course Road residents had a meeting a month or so ago and discussed quite a number of issues. Really just want to speak about 2 issues here, the hearing. One of them is traffic safety, because I believe that the traffic flow past the museum entrance to the building is actually really quite dangerous. We have a situation where disabled people are getting out into the live traffic lane. And that is, in terms of pedestrian safety, that is a no-no. It's just not acceptable. We would propose that talk with the disabled people and make a plan as to how to lay out the parking for the disabled people so that it's safe for them into. Just at the moment, the roadway there is really quite narrow, and we're trying to get bus parking, disabled parking, and traffic through all in a very narrow space. It's only 6 metres wide there. It's pretty congested. So the solution to that is to put in a bypass road along the northern boundary, down by the gum diggers' huts, and that would mean that the present roadway past the entrance would be for buses and for disabled people. And all through traffic would go on the bypass road. This makes the whole situation much safer. All of a sudden we get a 3 metre wide roadway and a 3 metre wide parking area where people can get out of vehicles safely. So we believe there's a serious crash there could cause serious issues further down the track. If somebody gets hurt, ACC is going to want to get involved. And we have sort of let the situation ride for 20 years. But we really need to do something about it. There's another issue is pedestrian access from the car parks. Now, there is no real pedestrian access from the car parks. It's no designated pedestrian lane or footpath. And so pedestrians just wander across the road. Now, it is the museum and it is reasonably safe, but if ACC get involved, they're going to start asking some pretty awkward questions. Traffic management plan that allows for pedestrians to get from the car parks to the entrance safely. That's something that I believe the council needs to look at very carefully. Need to involve the disabled community to have a say into what format they want their parking to be in. Because having parallel parking there, I'm not sure is the best option. It might be best to have some angle. But we need the disabled community to have some say in that and have some negotiation. So I think that the bypass road is actually really important. We'll ensure that we've got traffic flow that is safe and we've got pedestrians. That's going to enhance the visitor
1 minute.
experience. The other thing I'd like to discuss is that on the western side of the Vintage Machinery Club, there is the start of the bike track. Just to the north of that, there's a little knoll where people can sit and watch the kids riding their bikes and starting it. It's quite a nice view to the north and the west, but in the summertime, it's really, really exposed to the sun. So we would propose that District Council put up about 50 metres of fencing and provide a few trays of manuka seedlings, and we'll plant the seedlings and we'll look after them and release them so grow up and provide a bit of natural shade. We plant some manuka and then some tocha trees. They'll come up to, and they're pruned up, they'll come up to a really nice sunshade canopy. And that will be a real asset for people who just want to have a picnic, or parents that come down with their children for the bike track, or visitors to the machinery club can walk through there. So I think it would get quite a bit of use.
Thank you, members of the Old Golf Course Road residents, for your submission. I'll now ask if members of the committee if they have any questions of clarification they wish to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir, for your submission. About 3 years ago, the committee considered sort of the bypass road at the same level as the present road. Of course, it came down to cost and things like that. Are you perhaps suggesting that this bypass road sort of follows the contour of the down by the old huts and that?
Yes. I don't think we need to do a lot of filling there. The roadway can follow the existing ground contour to a large extent.
And in saying that, would you be considering perhaps further car parking at that level, or just having that bypass road from the sort of car park area going down past the old huts and then back up onto the main road?
If some car parking can be factored into that bypass road, that would be fine. Maybe an opportunity to get some more parking, because parking is going to become a little bit critical up there.
Yes, exactly. Perhaps my final question, and I fully appreciate this health and safety, and people walking from the car park, whether it's elderly, children, and the like. Is it as simple as actually making a clear sort of walkway with pedestrian crossings or things like that? Is it that easy, or?
Well, An example I can give you is at present, they're doing some work in the street, just outside the new building over there. And they have a well-defined track for pedestrians to use, so pedestrian access. I believe that sort of approach needs to be taken at the museum, where we have some painted lines with pedestrian access and some arrows, sign. It may not cause a lot of people to walk there, but if there's an accident, you have taken some steps to minimise the risk. And if people choose not to take your advice, that ends up being their responsibility. Whereas at present, it's district council's. I think we've got to be seen to be doing the right things.
Yeah.
And I think we can do much better than we've got at the moment. I don't think, and it's not going to cost, zillions of dollars. It's a reasonably low cost sort of exercise, but we just need to have somebody look at it and go, well, we can, and put some options.
Okay. Any further?
This question here. You can ask questions about anything related to the definition, but nothing outside.
Not even related back to the customs.
That's what's in front of them.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, members of Old Golf Course Road residents, for your submissions.
And we have the Library Museum Society next. And Barry Jones?
As an introduction to those of you who are fairly new in the upper area, I was a schoolmate of Noel Hilliam and have been working with him on ancient sites around New Zealand for many years and was part of helping to build the museum. And you probably have all had a copy of the submissions, haven't you? Okay, well, you will note the various points there. We purposely made the road going to the right-hand side as you enter the gate so that people could look out when they rounded the corner, a beautiful panoramic view of Dargaville and the river. And there was lots and lots of comments on that. And then it was just a loop road out past the present Machinery Club, which wasn't there originally, and back down to the middle. And it worked for all those years, no problems at all, and lots of comments about the layout. The other thing was the entranceway. We had the rainy roof built out in front of the museum so that passengers alighting from buses and RVs get out in the inclement weather, and then the buses would park on the right-hand side just along where that plinth from the original bridge has been put at the end of a garden. 2 buses could park along there, and we had that happening quite a bit. I was involved as a caretaker and manager of the Lighthouse Museum, Lighthouse Restaurant for many years. And as resident caretaker living in the flat upstairs, I was a custodian, and I was responsible for locking the gates after functions and all that sort of thing and opening them up in the morning. And it worked well. And as I put in my submission here, or our submission from a dozen of us, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, it worked well for years and years. Having the vehicles going the opposite way is just not conducive, especially a double roadway between the museum and the Machinery Club. Not feasible, really. So that's that part of it. Then we have the Rainbow Warrior thing. I have got a file, or files I should say, a carton of files on the Rainbow Warrior data. But I just want to read you something as to why the masts were put there, because a lot of you have got no idea what we did in the 1980s. So firstly, it's basically was to be a maritime museum. We've got 170 shipwrecks between the Hokianga and the south head of the Kaipara Harbour. And for that main reason in our research, we decided on the main theme as a maritime museum. And as you will have read, that supplements the Carry Museum and the Kaikouri Village one and all that sort of thing. The Rainbow Warrior thing, when the hull was decided to be sunk over at Matauri Bay on the other coast, there was no visible signs of the Rainbow Warrior that people could refer to. And it was a worldwide event with the French bombing that ship in the Auckland Harbour. And so that's why we got it. Noel and I tried to get the whole ship, but they'd already made a decision to sink the hull. So we just settled for the masts and the rigging and so forth. And they're permanently in there. The stays holding the masts up. Everything is mounted as it was on the ship. The dimensions are the same. And I think a retrograde step to try and remove the mast from there. They're an icon in New Zealand maritime history. Okay, then we have in the summary that the council have given us, the business of the no exit road. It's not feasible to have that as a no exit. And don't forget, Harding Park covers the area from where the Machinery Club boundary is going on to Golf Course Road, right down past the fence and down to the par side. The par side itself is only 100 metres by 80 metres. So that's just a little segment at the end of that bridge. It doesn't come up to the fence line going around the sharp corner. And so there's ample room for car park down there. Okay?
Thank you, Barry.
That's all right.
Question on behalf of the life members of the Museum Society. Do any members have any points of clarification they wish to ask Barry? Councillor.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I did read your submission. I just want to refer to the question that was raised earlier by my colleague over here with regards to relocating on the park with the Rainbow Warrior. Yeah. Is that something that you would consider conversations around?
Yes, but we had the opportunity to have an iconic part of marine history up here to supplement all the other stuff we've got. And we think we were lucky to get that because overseas tourists all knew and still know about the French bombing of the Rainbow Warrior. It's still an icon, from way, way back. And the plan is to we were originally going to put fishing net sails on it. And now we've changed the view and we're going to put webbing straps, like seatbelt stuff, great big squares as the sails and market them as a fundraiser. And as a family, you can buy 4 squares, or as an individual, you can buy a square, whatever. People can buy a piece of the Rainbow Warrior display at the museum. And the lighting, I've been in touch with the lighting people because I arranged all that original lighting. Because of the wind and so forth, it's flogging out and breaking the bulbs and so forth. They've got more LED lights now. We can buy long strips of 150 feet and all that sort of thing to outline the sails again. So that's just an ongoing thing that I'm working on. Okay.
The other members, points of clarification?
Just for clarification, you're looking at putting replica sails on the masts. Is that what
Yes, but no, not replica sails, just something to outline that there were sails on it with great big squares of webbing so that it doesn't impede any view. Yeah, whereas a fishing net, trawler nets that we were going to use, is quite small squares, only about 8 inches.
Right.
You've got barrier there to look through. Yeah. That's all right. Any more questions?
Thank you, Barry, on behalf of the life members of the Museum Society for your submission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Excuse me, taking this off, but speak better, breathe better. Thank you for this opportunity to have a bit of a speak about this lot. I'm no public speaker, so please excuse me if I suddenly freeze up. A few points here I've picked up from your comments, I think, on the back of this submission that you sent to us. If I may, as a supplement to my original submission. I submitted this in addition to the one from the Old Golf Course Road submission as an extra on of my own views in addition to what they've said in theirs. So, please excuse me fumbling around. Line. Taking down of trees in the park. This is in addition to what I submitted, and it came up as part of the ongoing works that you people have been doing. Please bear in mind that a totara tree can get to be a bloody big tree. We've got a totara tree on our property that's only about 7 years old, 6 meters in girth at the moment, and it's 8 meters high. I see you taking down wattle trees and replacing them with totaras. That's just one point. I strongly object to any roading going onto Old Golf Course Road and hence out onto Mount Wesley Coast Road. Cost for a start off, the amount of work that's going to be needed, plus the cost of compensation to properties that may have to be altered and taken over to widen the road. The road itself needs to be completely rebuilt in parts of the road. Cambers and so on and so forth have to be realigned as well. So all in all, one hell of a bloody cost that, to my mind, of consideration, while the council is still looking to try and tighten its purse a bit, is a little bit excessive to try and put this forward. It's just one point. Yes, get all the car parks sorted out and properly sealed or decently metalled. I went up there the other day, a couple of days back, and the parking area where the camper vans parked is just a hell of a mess of puddles and mud. That area, big flat area, needs to be sorted out. Removal of fences around the Heritage Museum, I don't agree that they should be removed because, quite frankly, there has been too much vandalism, hooning, and crazy bits and pieces going on around that museum in particular because of the machinery that they've got exposed out on the outside of the building. We do need decent fencing around the perimeter of the museum. It's essential. And their car parks sorted out as well.
1 minute.
Thank you. Yes, yes to getting the public toilets sorted out up there, they certainly need it. No planting, I see that has been scrubbed on the corner going down on the road, which is a good thing because we want to keep that view. The other thing I've got an objection to is the bicycle tracks. I would like to know for a start how these are going to be, first of all, how these are going to be marked out, whether they're going to be hard metalled or just scraped out and left as sand tracks. If they're going to be left as sand tracks, I can see that over a period of time, especially if there's a lot of bikes, it's just going to wreck the whole area. It's on sand. And it's a lot more, but it's
Thank you, Andy, for your submission. I'll just ask any members of the committee if they would like to ask any points of clarification.
I may, Mr. Chairman, just with reference to the like hooning around on the taking away the fences and things like that. If the gates were closed, that would negate that issue, wouldn't it?
But for parking of
No, just, you know how you referred to people driving around and hooning around on the machinery, the grass area outside the machinery.
not only there, but it's all around the place.
Yeah, so closing the gates regularly would negate that.
Would negate it to agree, yes, it would.
Anyone else?
There's a lot more that I could say, but unfortunately 5 minutes doesn't give me a chance to do so.
Thank you, Andy, very much for your submission.
Antonio, no. Is Callum McLaren here? Tailor Made Tours. Chair, I think the hearings have now finished, or the last speakers have not shown, so that's fine. As the hearings and vote on the motion to receive them.
Thank you for your submissions and also presenting them. We've had a mover and a seconder for the submission. I'll now put that motion that the Whaitō Joint Management Committee and Harding Park Committee notes the written submissions received to the draft Whaitō Harding Park and Old Mount Wesley Cemetery Reserve Management Plan, and B, notes the presentations made by those submitters who asked to be heard. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Right.
Members, you're welcome to stay if you wish to. Yes. We'll move on to item 4 of the agenda, which is operations update, and call Lara Stock, please.
Morena, everybody. Nice to see you all face to face this time. Through the chair, I will take it as the report has been read. I just have a couple of updates from when this report was written. So the widening of the recreational vehicle accessway has been completed. We're still to planting all together, but we're hoping to have that sorted, and we are working with the Camper Van Association to improve the actual dump station site as well. So they'll look at helping with upgrading that. The other update I have is that we've been in contact with the high school in regards to cutting back some of the wattle. They've got a group coming in potentially as well. We have been talking with Department of Corrections to see if we can have a regular team in. They're still catching up from all the COVID impact with them not being able to go out and complete projects. So that's taking a little bit of time. Yeah, but pretty much everything's still on track. There is just a little bit of a wait for different supplies and also with contractors who've had an impact with staff being away with COVID. So we're pretty much on track.
Would someone move that the operations update July 2022 report be received? William, seconded. Karen, put that motion, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
No, carried. Questions?
Yeah, Lara, thank you for your thoughts. I'm just going on.
Yes.
Since that project was completed, with that, have we got any indication of what the uses patterns are on that site?
No, we haven't. We have anecdotal information to say that we haven't had many people using it, but we are in winter. There has been where the parks have been closed because of the pandemic and all of that stuff. So I don't know if we've given it how much interest there is, but yeah, no, we've not. The kite recycling group response. So we've got a memorandum of understanding with them in regards to maintenance and that side of it. We are supporting them with the signage, but the use, the advertising or marketing of it, that would be sitting with them.
I just think that with some of these submissions that we read, we necessarily talked about but there's a comment about the site track and what should be done or not done before existing funding. It would be nice to know what the actual use patterns are. It's like getting a road upgrade, we can normally pick the number of vehicles we would process. We should get some information.
Yeah.
Certainly going forward, I think we should be monitoring about the use of plans. So if they do any work, you can then see whether or not they've improved the use of plans.
Yeah. Look into that. Yep.
Through the chair, just on that, the agreement for the to be maintained by the cycling club. Do they regularly, or how's that policed? How do we know that it's been done? And doesn't look like much has been done.
Yeah.
And also, is it their responsibility or ours to regularly inspect to see if they are safe to actually ride on?
Ultimately, with the landowner being Kaipara District Council, the PCBU sort of structure would come into play. So it would, the liability would sit with the council. We do have our contractors check over it. They check the trees that they go through to make sure that, widow makers are cleared and stuff. So we're doing that check in terms of the trees. I'd have to check with our contractor if they're doing regular checks on the actual track. Normally we have a contract for service and we have regular health and safety and maintenance checks coming through from those that do the contract service. This particular one was done a little different, so I'd need to probably look into it for what their responsibilities are, but yeah, no, we'll definitely look into that.
Okay.
No more further questions of Lara? Lara.
Thank you.
Next item is item 5. Someone move that the deliberation report. Councillor Karen, seconded. Councillor Peter, Wesley. Thank you, Mark.
I'll do my best to speak through the mask. Sorry, ready? I'll do my best to speak through the mask and try and guide us through this part. So the deliberations report. The Reserves Act requires that in order to go to the Reserve Management Plan approval, we must have a summary of the objections and comments received from the submitters. And we must have a statement saying the extent to which they have been allowed or accepted or disallowed or not accepted. So basically, you need to look at the points raised by submitters, which I've tried to summarise in the table at the end of the report. And we need to go through them and look at how we respond to those. Mr. Chair, if we maybe run this part of the meeting as a little bit less formal rather than the standard approach of questions for clarification and so on. Go through these points and get your responses. Once we've got your responses to each point, staff will then go away and amend the draft plan and then represent that draft plan to you for your approval. That you okay with that? See? The first, okay. So the first point here is the road layout. We received, this is probably the most contentious or the biggest talking point, I suppose, of the draft plan. And I haven't summarised all the many different suggestions we had on how the roads could be laid out. In terms of advice, looking at all the submissions and the report we received from Stella Projects some years ago, which I'll put a link there for you. So sort of obviously get an idea of how I thought might be a good layout, but that was that's me, and there's a lot of sort of the position that comes to us. There's probably quite a few different options, which would all be valid options. Some are considerably more expensive than others, but ultimately there's a number of different things we could do with the road layout. So what the road layout could be. What your views on road layout?
Through the chair, do we have any idea why it was changed direction from the original?
I have not been able to find that. Does anyone have memory of that? So I haven't been able to find why the road direction was changed. What I can advise is what you've done has been quite good. You've chosen the old golf course road option to consult on, because that gives us quite a few options at this point in terms of further consultation. If you choose the old golf course road option, if you choose the status quo or enhanced status quo, or to reverse the traffic flow to you don't need to do further consultation. That's either enhancing the status quo or it's proceeding with the proposal. So either of those any of that myriad of options won't require further consultation. If you want to choose something which is, sorry, if you want to choose something which is quite different to that, like just hypothetically creating a new access down to Park Road, which I don't know if that's feasible at all, but just hypothetically something that's outside the what's been consulted on, or making the whole of the current ring road bi-directional, then you would need to do. So anything to do with the status quo, whether it's this direction round or that direction round, or if it's onto Old Golf Course Road, would not require further consultation. So you've got quite a few options, and you've got a lot of good feedback from the community as well. Plus the previous reports to consider there. But yeah, I'm not aware of the reason why the direction was reversed.
So what Mark's saying, there's no record. That's what you're saying, Mark.
Without doing a file search at the council, which I apologise, haven't done a file search. We could go and do a deep file search to try and see what the reason was found. But it may even come down to some people in the past have referred to the view as if you come this way, the view, or to go that way, the view. So it may have even been a subjective decision rather than a technical decision at the time. Looking at the previous reports, I don't see a technical reason why the direction couldn't be put back as it was originally designed.
I can imagine it's just trying to think. You'd have to cross the road to go up to the right, wouldn't you? From the bottom.
You could orient. It could be orientated either way. It's just where you put the stop sign, so it doesn't. Yeah.
It's
it does.
the only thing I could imagine why it happened.
They may also be part of it. It's slightly more logical at the bottom, but that's again not a technical concern. So the road, so that the road goes anti-clockwise, which addresses the issue of the sharp end by the path side. That's currently a concern which is raised by submitters. That will be addressed by altering that. It addresses the museum entrance issue because you're stepping out of a bus to face the door rather than to face the road and the live lane. That's the advantages there. Disadvantages is that the mountain bike tracks and Beneficiary Club, that'd be the last thing you see rather than one of the first things you see. But that's probably about that there. The report we got from Stella suggested that the current entrance from entrance and exit from Mount Wesley Road has sufficient capacity to handle vehicle movements coming in and out of there. So that's certainly an option that's open to you. Maintaining the status quo, the current direction, and enhancing that with additional car park. Bypass road, we have to investigate the feasibility of, but that's also an option. And the Old Golf Course Road option is also an option on the table. It's the more expensive option, considerably. But and it still requires investigation to confirm the technical feasibility of it. As we heard, there's some narrow parts of that road, and that was noted that it's an aspirational direction, which would require quite a bit of additional funding and would also be subject to further investigations. But it's an option that you can proceed with, and we would then proceed to investigate the feasibility thereof. There's options there.
Just on the Old Golf Course Road, do we know if council is looking at upgrading the parking beside the new cemetery and the RSA cemetery down there, or doing anything along those lines in the foreseeable future?
I'm not aware of any plans, no.
It could tie in.
Well, thank you, Mark. With regards to the options, the roading options, we've heard submissions about Old Golf Course Road, and there is obviously more work to do if that was if that was a preferred outcome. When you talk about, you know, expense, obviously that's the most expensive option. Is that money that could be sourced externally, or would that fall on the ratepayer?
External money tends to be funding, and it really is a big unknown as to what's going to be available on the day. We do try to source external funding for projects where we can, because we've only got so much ratepayer dollars, and we will try and get external funding where we can. But yeah, how this would be funded is not yet set. It's likely going to be ratepayer. You know, how can we do this line? Let's see. Sorry, I was thinking about thinking because we talk about funding a big project like that. I'm just trying to think about the reserve contributions. Some of it could be funded through reserve contributions, which is coming from developers. So it's money we collect from developers. If you spend it there, you obviously can't spend it somewhere else, but it's going to have to come from valuable developments. So you'll be some money available through that. General rates, particularly for the roading aspects, upgrading the roads, golf course road, that would be ratepayer dollars through our roading budgets, and then you'd be having your potentially having subsidy from NZTA on top of that. So it's sort of will be a mix of things, and in addition, we might try and get external funding. So it would probably wouldn't come from one pot of money. It would probably come from a number of different pots. But ultimately, it's money which which would have to be collected from somewhere. It could be. Yeah, so it's as you say, it's one of the more expensive options. It's something which would have to be funded through a future long-term plan, future council budget. It's possible to fund something like that, but again, it's a question of, we have to investigate firstly how feasible, how much it's going to cost, and then we have to look at how we would budget that and fund that and include it in the budget, and we have to go through the LTP process.
Just following on. That exit road talked about. You're right, it would be a much more expensive option. At present, the valuable catchment area is not useful funds. Not that sufficient funds. Doing work of that magnitude in that area. So you'd be looking to future subdivision work that was going on in a valuable area, where actually the course of the enable any such work. But definitely be in the longer time frame than rather than the immediate time. For others, for an option was looked at. People do further work on understanding what the general area is in terms of visitor flows, make sure that you don't end up spending a huge amount of money to put in an access road. It doesn't actually people accessing it. To invest that sort of money to do that requires a definite need to be legally demonstrated. Work that would need to be done if there was a view that that needed to happen. That is good.
Can I ask, Madam Chair, what are you asking us for right now? Are you asking us for a decision? And that decision has to be made today.
Oh, preferably, but otherwise we need to schedule another meeting or workshop, and then you look at running into an issue with the timeline, for the project timeline for this reserve management plan, given that we're working close to the elections. But ideally, what we're wanting to do now is work through each of these points and get direction and get a decision on each of these points, which we'll then put into the revised draft And then we will then bring that draft back, or we'll bring the plan back to you for approval once we've amended it or not amended it based on the decisions here today.
Chair, you're giving direction today so that if they are keep the plan as it is. You've heard all the submissions, you've read all the submissions. Keep the plan as it is, or you amend it to certain things submitted that you think, that's what the choices are on the screen, and you'll give your direction. Then they will be amended, and it comes back 6th of September to an extraordinary meeting to be adopted based on your choices today.
So just a question through you, Mr. Chair. So we have submitters present here today, and I see in the report there is 15. And so I have not the luxury to see the others, so I haven't seen the others.
So all submissions that we've made are in the agenda. The book has got all of the submissions, and a number of submitters asked that they would have a chance to each of their submission. So we've heard from them. So we've received all of the feedback from submitters from the community.
Through the chair, all of the package in your agenda, all the submissions.
I've got them.
Yeah. It's every submission, but not all people like to come and speak to their submission. So 7 asked to speak and 4 spoke, 5 spoke today. Based on what you've read.
So I've gone through them and I'll just use the fire services one. There are stuff in there, even though they're not present here, that I was going to directly ask them, how do I do that?
So further questions for clarification. Probably as we go through the points, if you've got further questions for clarification, put them to myself, and I can put them to Ken's. So Ken's are on the list, which we'll talk about today, and we can. Or I think the direction I've given with that one is that we work with Ken's on what those standards will look like in respect to that area, because it's possibly not the easiest place to apply standards. Those obviously have implications for road layouts to some extent, because fighting dam does adjoin the road. But I don't know that that's a major consideration. We consider the overall road layout. That answer your question? Yeah.
I'm interested to like, if we proceed with A, which is the realignment, and we go down further investigations, it could eliminate itself as an option because it becomes just untenable financially. So I'm happy to move on your decision, because it may end up that is just not going to happen anyway, because it doesn't financially make sense.
Yeah.
It is too difficult. There are bigger issues that we've heard come from submissions around how that is or is not possible. So without continuing with the investigation, there's uncertainties, there's things we don't know. So I suppose I've read the submissions, I've heard from the submitters this morning, but there is still a degree of uncertainty because we don't have answers to some of the things that are being raised, which is kind of why I said, do we need to make a decision and the proposed, or to proceed with the proposed roading alignment based on the fact that there's more investigation needed.
Just one thing.
That's an option.
Yes, just one. Just consider until we work through that. So, one issue we have is ad hoc construction, or stage construction. So we've just seen a new entrance to the current museum car park constructed, for example, which was laid out and designed with the understanding that the traffic goes in a particular direction. So if we were to take the direction that we're going towards Old Golf Course Road, things like pieces that we will have a bit of budget to build, and if we go to, for example, to do repair work, to do alterations to the mountain bike car park, we would do that with the, we would sort of build towards the direction that we're going towards Old Golf Course Road. And yes, as you say, we'd also proceed with the investigation. So we would have to, if the intention is to investigate and explore that further, and then make a decision, we'd have to just be careful how we capture that in the plan. And I wonder if we almost need to have a fallback position potentially in the plan that we indicate that if that we'll explore this way, if that doesn't work, we might go.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with what saying. There are still a number of things that I think need to be defined and nailed down in terms of the details for that proposed A option is definitely accepted as the way forward. I think that we'll proceed with those roading lines and something like difficulty at this stage from what I've been seeing all this. I think there's more work to be done, and I'd be happy to modify that, say such a thing, because if go forward and find out once that extra work is done, that the cost totally outweigh the benefits. There's no obvious external funding. The only way to be funded out of the roading budget was to short-change other roading maintenance or whatever in this area. And I would say you probably fall back to option B and start starting up the current road and putting money into maintaining, widening, giving better ability, etc., on our existing layout. I think that we believe that in there is a proceed with the proposed road makes a definite statement that that is the way you're going. I don't know that we've heard enough at this stage to say yes, we agree with it. I think we've got to find out whether or not give it an option of how much it's going to cost, what the benefits are. Do they make it immediately a acceptable box, or hang on, big question mark, let's put the money or lesser amounts into doing a better job on the that's my question.
Further investigate?
Continue.
So if you want to try and get a direction, is the direction is then to investigate the Old Golf Course Road option.
If I'm honest, I thought that's what we were doing in the first place. So we're not at a point yet where we could make a decision on proceeding because we don't have all the information.
Yeah.
I totally support what Councillor Wesley's saying is the wording perhaps the intent here is that we proceed with it. If we could change that to continue an investigation, or something to that effect.
We need to have some, even if they're only high level estimates, some more engineering, road engineering assessments being done. Find out what that costs. I suspect it's going to be a lot more than you think.
And so the link that's available there that has got cost estimates with it, which are now dated by a couple of years, but you can do a calculation for inflation on them. Or we can go to consultants and get them reassessed, redone. But we do have the cost estimates there. For that, anything is, I mean, with engineering, anything tends to be feasible. It's just a question of the cost of it. So, so I was wondering, are we proceeding to a business case, or are we? What level of further investigations are being requested?
Once we know the ballpark figure of what that cost will be, and we have a better understanding of the traffic flows and the numbers of people using that, we can quickly work out whether or not the volume or the value of that work is commensurate with the amount of use it's going to get. Because the same amount of money could well be better spent on upgrading the existing traffic route and improving that. We know there are improvements that need to be done, and we would end up making that very, very much better traffic flow around the park. Just a little bit concerned about any direction here. Of course, is that we just did what is already on the soft for what concrete data supports us.
And in terms of further investigations, we're going to be building in towards a business case. I'm thinking in terms of identifying the costs and engineering considerations is something which the staff is not difficult for us to do. The decision around whether that investment is worth the outcome, what do we have around that in our frameworks?
So rather than business case, maybe we look at cost benefit.
That's right. I don't think we need a business case at this stage.
At this stage, yeah.
Your cost benefit analysis has got to actually come out positive, and if it does, then not pretty close to
Thank
I
you.
agree with that. Totally agree with that, but yeah.
Does that cost benefit cover cultural, social, economic, environmental? It'll cover all four of the well-beings? Yeah. I would support that.
Yeah.
Because I did hear health and safety come up quite a bit, and that site is potentially a health and safety disaster waiting to happen. And one of the reasons we looked to divert the road was to get the traffic off people that were using the front sections. And yes, the view is amazing. Sitting in a car, you're quite safe, but if you're standing there, enjoying the view and taking it in, you're contending with traffic. And we have kids, we have people with disabilities, we have all sorts of people using that site. We have people using headphones, earpods, that are not listening for traffic, that are potentially high risk. So I just want to make sure if we do decide to shut that for traffic, that where all these other things that have come up around parking and access to the front door, all of that has to be hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Just put some wording up there, is that helpful? Just pop some wording up there, is that helpful?
Continue to
I
invest.
think we just got to.
Yeah.
If the cost benefits and this is positive,
I think we just say cost benefit analysis and report back to the committee.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think we need another.
What staff are looking for is they need to put something in the plan that's going to work in the plan. So we can't, what you're saying is you still like the direction you're heading in the plan, that's what you're saying, except that it needs to be investigated further for cost benefit analysis.
And based on the submissions we've
Yeah,
received, there's some work to do around consulting with our community, particularly those living on Old Golf Course Road. So, yeah, we've got work to do.
Well, it comes back, Mr. Chair, to the very fact why we didn't go ahead with that side road 3 or 4 years ago. It was a cost benefit. It wasn't part of the budget, so to per se. Now we're hearing us today that considering something similar, cost factor could actually be a lot less than what we had. So, you know, if we're looking at the Old Coast Road, that in itself, I think, will actually far outweigh from a cost factor the reason of considering that option. One of the things I thought we're trying to do here as part of our management plan, reserve plan, was actually try and enhance and actually improve the uptake and the benefit of the park. So any food tier spent must actually reflect that outcome.
We could look at option C and incorporate that into the decision that the committee is seeking, which is a cost benefit analysis be reported back to the committee.
Or,
Yeah, that's probably sort of.
Pick up options.
Pretty straightforward and clear there.
yes,
Okay, that, we land with that? Yes, Tim, yes. A further investigation to be reported back to the committee. We move to the second point.
Or do, how does that impact on our timeframe at the moment?
Today's meeting, you mean?
Well, we're going to be coming back with how does it impact?
Through the chair, Mark is just saying, have you got what you need that the plan will still continue on its trajectory towards?
Yes, well, we'll just have to be very, how we word that part in the plan, that we are ultimately showing a direction or a preference in the plan that we're heading towards Old Golf Course Road. And then once that plan is adopted, the next steps will be to investigate finances. We'll just have to, I suppose, when we're reading the plan, showing the plan that we're heading towards Old Golf Course Road, be clear that if the costs we'll show the direction of the plan and make it clear in the plan that that's pending the costs being worth a cost, that's pending a cost benefit analysis. That's okay. So number 2. So this is about disability access.
Kind of ties in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that forms,
goes back to my comment that actually it's not about just saying yes to that, and no to that.
Yeah.
The whole lot has to be worked together.
Within this part, we have a number of organisations such as the Mast, within that. I just want to clarify just exactly, when we start talking about things that are within that license, whose responsibility is it to progress? For example, I'll just give you an example. We're talking about pedestrian or disabled access from the car park or the museum through into the museum entrance point. Could be put in line with it. That's all part of the museum license. My question would be, what happens to the museum when you go over and done something about it? Because I'm looking at other license to occupy people around. And within their area of license, responsibility within that license law, in respect to they do a lot of stuff that will be making sure that their responsibilities are met and all relevant. This questioning, because in the submissions that we've received on this plan, there are a number of things that I see that fall outside the plan. One of them is a lot of comment on operational matters, which I think is clearly an issue that needs to be addressed, but not as part of this plan. It's a day-to-day annual plan maintenance of the car, and they should be stripped out immediately and put it without master. The second thing is clearly define what is council responsibility and what are the license holders' responsibility. I'm sure those license organisations don't want to see council making decisions and steamrolling them into areas which they believe is their responsibility to address. So could we have some discussion on just exactly on these things like the access way to things like the museum or the machinery museum, etc., to find out just exactly where does council's responsibility end and where does the other.
so that depends on the licenses to occupy tend to be individualised. They're a standard council template, but they do tend to be individualised to different operations. In terms of the museum, there's a mix of things being completely their responsibility, and council doesn't really have any input. So, for example, how they lay out the displays in the museum, it's them. things like any alteration they want to do to their buildings, like the exterior of their buildings, if they wanted to, for example, build an extension onto the museum, they'd have to come to this committee and ask for approval to do so. And there's a bit of grey area on these some things, or a bit of overlap is probably a better way to put it. When we talk about things like their entrance and the driveway going past their entrance, that the driveway is within their footprint, but it's also something which council provides and maintains, and it's probably a need then to collaborate and discuss together on what kind of alignment we would go for within that immediate vicinity, subject obviously to the wider discussion of whether vehicles are going which direction, and whether if that becomes blocked off, and becomes that if people exit out through Old Golf Course Road rather than exiting down the hill. So there's sort of a mix within that.
There's some grey areas, obviously, but
Some overlap.
on a relatively, I think money on providing painted strip or walkway for access from the car park to the museum. That's something that the museum committee said we're going to do that. It's done. That didn't even put something like it, because under Posh, if something has happened there, they're going to be also investigating this as a serious thing.
And so that would be an alteration to the buildings that need to come to us for approval, but at the same time, it's also the council's driveway. So that we need to have a discussion around who's providing what in terms of how we outlay that area.
This is one of the, I see that an issue that needs to be put on the table, because we're looking at a reserve management plan. We need to be very, very clear that all the stakeholders in that part need to be very clear as to what their areas of responsibility are. Where they go ahead and make a decision without, of course, the council, or certainly whether they should say this game, vice versa. I think these are fundamental issues, and unless we address them early on, these are going to be raised progressively as sticking points and getting things done on the park over the next.
Through the chair, before we proceed with this item, Mr. Chair had advised he has a conflict of interest on topics to do with the museum, so he is passing the chair to Willie Wright, who is the other to Uriaho representative in the room, to chair for these items, and it's my pleasure to have these conversations. Questions and discussion around.
The proposal here, or suggestion here, I'm hearing from you is that this is something to be tied into the above. It forms part of that bigger discussion on the road layout within the park. Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, it's awkward actually really hearing you through that mask.
So it is, Mr. Mark. Oh, can I?
Oh, say so, you know, everybody's.
Lose track of what the protocols say, change and come and go. Yep, protocols. Okay. So with this one, what am I hearing from you is that this is something to be tied into the above. It's something to do with the wider consideration of how do we lay out the vehicle access, and in and around that, obviously the pedestrian and
Yeah. If I can, going back to much more Willie's comment earlier, the intention is to make that site user friendly and lift the visitor experience. If lifting it by making it too hard to access the front door becomes a problem, then we haven't achieved the outcome we were aiming for in the first place. So I would say that, you know, yes, they might have the license to occupy, and maybe, hey, it's not our problem, but yeah, it is, because our community are disadvantaged as a result of our decisions. So I go back to my comment, yes, these things are all wonderful, but they have to be hand in hand, which is why I asked the question about the social, cultural, environmental, blah, 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 to make sure that it all marries up and that it's all part of the big plan to enhance that site because it needs investment. At the moment, we're investing in small amounts and very sporadically. We want to try and bring it all together through the plan. So I support the direction of number 2 because it ties back to number 1 and we consider it all together and the impacts on the museum should we decide to go down that route of closing that access way.
So to progress number 2, Karen's just made the point. Do we take that wording, Tracy, of further investigate, or just add it to the number 1?
Gets rolled into.
And that includes ongoing discussions with the museum, correct? Thank you.
All right.
Number 3. So the draft plan proposes an overflow area that was supported by submitters. They also requested a proper entry form to that. And so we're happy to progress with that.
Yep. Happy with that. Tracy, so I'm still the chair, but now I'll pass it back to. Pass the baton back to the chair.
I know it's a little awkward, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Thanks, William.
Number 4.
Okay, so the next one there is about the proposal to join the Kaiperi Heritage Machinery Club's car park with the car park for the mountain bike tracks. Is that something which we want to keep in the final plan?
Just looking at the place on the scene. Yeah, when you look at the here it is going campaign serve. And note the comment that there's a process to heritage museum process. But I would have thought there would have been other ways of maintaining what they're concerned about as security and risk work. Visual perspective, a lot more, my view certainly would be still to environment. When you look at the use of space, look at the cost of doing it, if you more, so better occupancy, then that's the way we should. That's I think what most of us agree with.
There agreement on that?
Yep. Just a point that proposed combined car park is in conjunction with the access to Old Golf Course Road, isn't it?
Yes, it is shown as such, yes.
So in order for that to happen, we would need to put the access to Old Golf Course Road through. Is that correct?
It's not actually dependent on that. So if we were to go with an enhanced status quo, you could still join the 2 car parks together.
Okay. Just trying to find it a bit hard to visualize, but yeah.
Is this on that?
Just to clarify, we proceeded with the plan as it is.
Yes, keep that direction in the plan. Okay, So as you drive in the gates to the park, someone requested that we have some car parks down there as well. There's currently some sort of unformed parking. The bollards are positioned far enough back from the driveway you can park down there. Would the committee like to see formed car parks there or proceed with the present unformed parking?
If we've got an indication on how much use to be made of how much would be made of the
That we don't have traffic counters, obviously. Don't know how much it gets used, how often there's a car park down there. I don't know, Lara, if you have, Lara, Jesse, do you know how frequently there's someone parked down by the museum gates there to access?
So quite, there's a hand of park. I went there this morning and it's not for car park.
Yeah, perhaps, Mr. Chair, because I've actually saw it in some of the submissions, a direct relevance to the cemetery and parking, and people talking about, there's not enough parking or gets when it's wet, the side of the road gets boggy and that. Is there a connection between actually having a formed car park area there for the benefit of also the cemetery? And, they talk about the historical sort of signage and stuff like that. I know they're talking about the Sexton's home, but I'm just trying to think about a connection.
A little bit of a walk, I think, around the walking track, but yes, you can walk from there to the cemetery. And I think it's the Harding family cemetery that's immediately there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, most times I go past, there is a car or two parked there. But in saying that, it's fine. We had a situation where my brother was buried not so long ago in the middle of a very wet winter. It was fine. Parking wise and whatever, so whether we need to put a formal car park there, I'm not totally convinced that it should be high on the priorities.
So perhaps, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to know, so what would be the difference between what's there now and the word formed? Formed car park.
Laying some tar seal or compacted gravel, as opposed to presently it's be like sandstone there with a bit of grass on it.
Right.
As you said, it's not getting muddy, then it's not getting muddy or torn up, maybe it's sufficient as is.
I mean, as it is, you might be able to fit 10 cars across there. If you put a formal park, then you'll be restricting cars. So it might be 4 or 5 cars, and you would restrict more going up onto the verge, possibly.
Gotcha.
Like a bigger problem.
Well,
Good.
potentially, I think walkers park there, and cyclists definitely park there, and both just going for a cycle around the loop and those using the tracks. Maybe in some that will be more and more. I've seen 7 or 8 cars parked around there that are using the mountain bike track, but that's during the summer. It's the summer sport. So. Yeah.
Some vehicles angle park and some of them don't,
Oh, that was my comment too, is sometimes you can't park there because of how people have inconsiderately parked, which would tidy that up, but as you rightly say, it may actually lessen the numbers of cars able to park there.
Potentially. I mean, it Yeah, if you've got a specific parking area with white lines, it makes it pretty complex.
Are they getting us convinced that we've really got a clear investment? Yeah. Was about needing right point of investment. Or not inside.
So leaving that as it is, there's no need to form a car park there.
Yeah, I support that. Yeah, status quo.
Number 6 is the car parking at the Old Mount Wesley Cemetery. There's a request that more car parking be provided and clarity on where the roads to start. Stop. Currently, we've got gravel roads through there rather than formed roads, and there isn't really a lot of formed car parking in the cemetery.
We're talking about the grass verge up along the fence line and opposite. Is that?
That and within the cemetery itself. So both. It's the matter of parking. There were suggestions within the submission. Obviously, I've just summarised it to that. It's suggested that we have more car parking and take direction from yourselves on what that could look like, or to what extent it would be allowable.
I mean, to me, the parking along the road on the verge would make sense. And it's pretty wet down there, so that would have to be like formal construction. And I'm not sure whether it's certainly the top side, the western side of the road into Sexton Hut. It looks like there's plenty of scope there. Pretty positive for that.
Perhaps my question here, Mr. Chair. So Mark, from the fence to the tar seal of Mount Wesley,
Is that under the park?
is that council land? Is that public?
Road reserve.
Council road reserve, right?
Because I mean, it's technically, I suppose, it's outside the boundary of the reserve, but it would be appropriate, I think, in the reserve management plan to identify parking there, which council could put in a future budget to take that action.
Oh, so that won't cost the committee.
Well,
Council budget.
it's all council's budgets ultimately.
Well, ultimately, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same as the committee. I mean, the committee could indicate that that's an appropriate place to put the parking for the cemetery, just along that road there, and then any action that gets put in the reserve management plan, sort of have like a list of actions at the end of it, and then as council's doing its budgets, forming its budgets, that and look at. That looks like that's a priority. We'll prioritise as well. What's
yeah.
Allocate funding to it and go through the LTP process. And as you're aware, the LTP process, saying, okay, what have we got budget for? What are we going to sort of cut out because it's not as important to something else? Through that LTP process, to have a budget put against it. It's also something which we can apply for external funding for this business statement, which I would imagine is going to meet that criteria, but generally we'll also try and apply for external.
Are you proceeding with that?
I would support that.
Yeah.
Especially while we're looking at exiting onto that road and pushing more traffic down it. It would make sense. Regardless to do it anyway, to tidy it up.
Yeah, stick with the wording.
Oh,
The old cemetery.
Improving parking.
oh, sorry.
The old cemetery.
Yeah, so we're not.
And so I've got add parking along the verge of the road.
I'd agree with that.
Right, next one we've got here. Present the footpath, which goes along around the corner along Poto Road, that should be extended to the park entrance. And that one is something which you could do that, or alternatively it could be done through other connectivity linkages within the park. So currently it goes as far as the first gate to the Old Mount Wesley Cemetery. And it's great. And if you are forming, obviously if you're going to form car parking right there, then that's something which could be looked at as if that car parking includes a footpath. So it's something which can be looked at generally from the scope of the plan, or it's something which we could put as a specific action. We would rather put it as a specific action which goes along the road. But there's
That extension of that footpath, we then put the criteria that allow us to gain
that I'm not so well versed on, because I'm not I don't work in the transport planning space, but potentially.
Because we're talking about taking a footpath from a relatively large private company up to a cemetery and
And my understanding is my understanding is that we'll probably be able to get subsidy for roading projects. It's gotten easier than what it used to be to get subsidy. But I have to confirm that with my colleagues there. But really, it's at this stage it's about taking the direction. You know, whether should the footpath go along the road, or should there be a walking link within the cemetery, where there's tracks within the cemetery.
Most of it, yeah. I think, yeah, and putting the car park there is going to cut it off pretty short, isn't it?
Yeah, we have to investigate obviously whether one part of the car park. I think the car park would go between the two gates of the cemetery.
Yeah.
So it could be that we form a car park there, or it could be that the car park goes on the other side of the fence within the cemetery. So the footpath goes within the cemetery, or even which can be looked at through that. So the plan includes high level guidance on improving connectivity between the park and other areas targeted in section 7. So it's already covered at a high level. It's just not specific to having a path. So someone has really continued along the road, which the plan doesn't specifically high level talk about access linkages and connectivity under section 7. So what we could do is leave the plan as it does, and that doesn't stop us from doing that footpath extension, and it also doesn't lock us into doing it. It's just generally in line with the direction of the plan.
So, yeah, I agree with your recommendations. Don't include it as a specific project, but included that with the other. Includes some other form as part of the car parking walking improvements.
So it's projected in a plan somewhere that footpath will go in.
Linkages will go in. So the reserve management plan currently says we'll put linkages, walking tracks, etc. Doesn't say we will build a footpath and a footpath along the road, but it does say which we will link things together. So it would permit us doing that, but it also doesn't lock us into that. We want to say it has to go through the cemetery rather than along the road.
We can continue then.
I'm going to lock them in.
And next one here. Okay, so this is about the roadways within the cemetery. As you see currently there, From gravel to grass. So it was requested that they be more clearly defined.
Mark, your comment here about the engineering assessment, what is that? Is that specific to the roadway or just to make sure that we're not impinging on old cement burial plots or what? What's
At this stage, it's fairly low key. It's more just sort of designing the road, the road widths, the edging channels, stormwater effects, etc. So
Yeah.
Speed. And that's generally the sort of the cut and thrust with all of the reserve management plan in a way that we tend to say this is the direction we're heading. But then we have to then do the more detailed design following that. So you would say, you know, for example, in this case, we're going to improve the road. Allocate funding to that in the budget, and one of the first things we do is to engage an engineer to properly detail design that bit of roadway before it gets handed over to our delivery team, who will then actually engage a contractor to go and start putting down gravel and tar seal. So it's just sort of detailed design element. So we don't, at this stage, you know, any of the concept plans, you know, if you want to go out there and exactly measure exactly where on the concept plan the line is drawn, it's not really what we're doing there. We're sort of indicating this is what we're going to build. That's, you know, that line might be here or there. It actually comes to it.
So we would have support for that.
Yeah.
Support for number 8.
It is, yep.
Assessment.
Rainbow Warrior Masts. So,
Pass the chair back to Willie if we can.
thanks. Yep.
Oh, thank
With the Rainbow Warrior Masts, we can leave the direction in the plan that they are that we support them being moved. That way, if the Davao Museum do one day want to support them, one day want to move them, we would support them in doing that. We could also change the plan to simply be silent on the matter, which would just mean that it's either here or there, and the committee can consider what support we might give them if they want to move them. We can also say that we support them remaining where they are, in which case, if it comes to questions such as council or lighting or sales or structural maintenance, etc., council could consider contributing to that. So, sort of, we've got a bit of flexibility on where we can go with that. And it's really over to you on. Do the
Thanks, Mark. Any comments from the members? Peter?
I think we've discussed the future potential of developing the old power side. Of course, one of the issues about location for those projects was in I don't think there's any doubt around certainly this where these use that. The Rainbow Warrior Mountains are a very essential part of New Zealand's maritime history. Was an international event, and those masts shouldn't be lost. Whether they're in the best place in the physical development of the time, questionable. I think we've got to leave enough room in this plan. If we're further down the track of developing the thoughts on how we want to get to the developed, become a real educational and historic attraction, you may then find, well, really, we'd like to move those to some other location on the park. That option would then be discussed with the museum. I don't think we can be black and white here and say they are going to be moved or they're not going to be moved. I think we're not far enough down the track of looking at that overall the east end of the flexibility there, or the is chosen would be in discussion with the
One of the things here, I didn't realise that the Masts had a place, what they call licensed occupied. Didn't know that. And so I'm inclined to think like Peter. Aaron, you're thinking?
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that we can have the conversations with the museum, and I agree that they may not be in the appropriate site, but they certainly have a place in the history of, and the continuation corridor at the museum. I'm an avid, I use the path, I go to the path frequently, and we take a lot of people to the path, so you just need to make sure that that space accommodates the cultural history, the maritime history, and it all works together and not against each other. So yeah, I support that corridor, and I appreciate the submissions that have come in around how we might be able to further that conversation and what it will look like. Might take 10, 20 years, but
yeah,
it'll take as long as it needs to take. So yeah, I'd support that.
Oh.
Yeah. It's quite clear it's the museum's responsibility, or they are the museum's responsibility, and that we would work in with them and whatever happens going forward. And as Karen said, we'll just keep that conversation going and see what happens in the future. I think if we can leave that open in the plan, that would be beneficial to all parties.
So are we actually saying, there was 2 points, the last part of the sentence was be silent on it. Are we actually saying that, or are we looking for a rewording, Mark?
I think
what are you hearing?
From you is that you want the plan to stay as it is, which is that that the plan supports moving the masts, and as if the museum ultimately gets to make the call on if the masts move or not. But if they do choose to move the masts, there is grounds for council to support them moving.
Yeah. Peter? Yeah, you guys happy? Yep.
And the next matter is similar, which is some submitters wanted to see the Rainbow Warrior masts enhanced with new lighting. And this is really just putting here, I suppose, for clarity that, if we're taking the stance that support lighting, etc.
Yep.
Yeah, Chair, shortly.
We're going into further development section.
The committee, as long as we've got a forum, we can continue.
I'm happy with that. So I relinquish my position. Pass it back to the chair.
We're departing about 12:30.
Oh, okay.
Chair now with Rex, and is the committee happy to continue?
As long as we have a quorum. We're going to have lunch or something like that, or what? So we could go through to 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
We've got it. Let's just work our way through it.
Okay, cool.
Because if the chair needs to go, we can pass the chair to you and just continue. And we can also adjourn for a coffee.
Yeah, I was just going to have. Thank you. Carry on.
Number 11.
Okay, so we're able to proceed? Yep. Okay, so further development. So one submitter asked about having a site identified for a convention centre. in the overflow parking area. So with responding to this one, you can leave the plan unchanged and just rely on Part 2, Section 9, which gives considerations for allowing further licenses to occupy. Or you can specifically identify areas for further development and say if further developments to occur at the park, we'd like to direct it to these and these areas. And some of the advice given on this is that applications for licenses to occupy, they tend to be by a group that's got quite specific needs or has a clear idea or vision of what they want to create. And we might need to have them come to you and say, this is my vision. And say, how does that fit with Part 2, Section 9? Rather than saying, is it in one of the areas which we've identified previously? So, you can take either approach on that. You can identify areas and say, these are the areas where we want to encourage further development to go. Or you can say, if you want to do further development, come talk to us and we will consider the matters in Part 2, Section 9.
Section.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next part, this is about the Whare Tonga. It's just a space for Te Reo Hau to present their artifacts and tell their stories. There was no objection to this received, so should really remain in the plan.
Support.
Mr. Budding, do you support the Whare Tonga suggestion to?
Number 12.
Yes.
Yeah, well, there was no submissions against. So just wondering why it's in there.
Yeah, so partly for completeness that we are considering all points raised by submitters, and also because this is going to be reworked to be the to cover the requirements of this another part of the act, the next stage of the process for going for approval. The next one's similar to it. Again, there's without submitter opposition, there's no basis to remove. So number 13 about restoration of path site. No one opposed restoration of path site. There was some suggestions in there around where the structures should be located, with some opposing them being located in other parts of the park. So we could change the plan to say that all replica structures will be only in the path site area, or we can just leave it as it is, that there could be in other areas. The museum had concerns about them locating directly within their footprint, but the fact that it's their footprint means we have to talk to them about that anyway, so they're protected by that already. So is everyone okay for that to remain unchanged? This is the request we heard for a shaded area by the bike track. This is something which we could add to. We can add to the plan. We don't have to add to the plans. Were people in favour of that suggestion?
Yep.
Okay, this one's quite specific. Asking for goal to be added to the plan about improving the visitor experience.
Yep.
That to be added.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything that would.
Order.
We could work this into the section on access linkages and connectivity.
Everyone okay with that? Support?
Yep.
And that's the plan. Okay, we work that in. Yeah. Number 16. So it's more.
Yep. Support. Yeah. Leave in.
17 concerns were raised over the direction in the plan that the park should have a heritage park atmosphere. This is this is something, concern seems to relate to that council may require existing buildings to be redesigned or repainted ahead of scheduled maintenance. And the suggestion I'd have there is that we should maybe reword the plan to be clearer on what a heritage approach means, and that we won't require existing buildings to be redesigned or repainted ahead of scheduled maintenance. That's accessible to everyone there. And sorry, apologies again, this was one raised by the Davao Museum, I believe, in their submission. So I was asked the chair for that.
Yep.
Is everybody?
Yeah.
Better?
Better, okay. Number 18. Again, improving accessibility for disabled people throughout the park. Reading there. Number 19, Davao Museum again, objects to clause 6.2D on page 20 of the draft plan regarding commercial activity. So the concern there is about the ongoing operation of the Lighthouse Function Centre. Are we happy for the plan to be made more clearer that shops, function centres, station venue hire, that kind of thing be permitted?
Sure.
Okay, number 20, it was requested that a fun and interesting children's playground should be constructed in Harding Park. That's something which would be an appropriate use of the park, would be happy to see.
I think that's sort of, I hadn't thought about that, but that was a great a comment in one of the submissions that, and I thought, yeah, why not? I think we should put it in the plan, but I did want to question something there about elderly exercise machines. How that looked, or what did that mean? Yeah, no, I think put it in the plan. Yep.
Yeah. I'm supportive of it, but it depends where and what, and yeah, you know, like, do we want them on the front by the Rainbow Warrior Mast? No, no. Personally, I think that would actually make matters worse.
Yeah. Detracts.
But there's definitely a place for our kids up there. Whether it's somewhere near the bike park or, I don't know, but it'd be worthwhile investigating appropriateness of where and what. I have a tendency to think that something more natural up there versus big metal. They've got plenty of that down here. It would something unique and potentially from a Te Ao Māori base with wood, or I know Selwyn Park School comes to mind. There's huts and things like that. That would be far more receptive to from a cultural perspective. Even a that pirate ship's probably in the wrong place. If it makes sense, something like that up there would have been better. But I support something. I just don't know what something is.
Yeah.
It's through the chair. Playgrounds are usually centred around where people are, not so much where people go to. But yeah, I agree with Karen as far as it would be pretty important that what it looked like basically and where it looked like. It's a biggie for me.
If we identify an action plan that will include a playground can be included in Harding Park, should include cultural elements. We can be silent on basically everything else, including the location. And we can work that can be worked through at a further meeting, but it means that someone can put in a budget funding for a playground, and then we come to the committee and say, and it's got cultural elements. We don't have to do that, that can be worked through later.
On that, wouldn't that come under the submission about the new conference centre and things like that? How we worded that any extra constructions going forward, that we haven't got a specific place, but we're open to it?
Not exactly, because that one is looking, that part of the plan is looking at licenses to occupy. So it's assuming that someone is coming to council externally, as opposed, and is also aimed at large development like museum. Okay, so we'll add that to number 21. It was requested that the sextons shared at the Mount Wesley Cemetery available for information panels, maps installed by Mount Wesley Angels and the Maritime Museum Society. So this can be included as an action plan. However, it doesn't actually need to be in the plan to be progressed.
So when you're saying here, Mark, to be included in the plan and allows for funding, who's the funder? Well, I mean, it helps. What's the,
places fund. There's a myriad of different external funding options out there, particularly once you're not council, once you're in a community group, there's quite a lot of different funding agencies available. Being able to say this is an action identified in the plan adds weight to your application.
like a support letter? Yeah, cool. Yep, I support it.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Number 22. This is another one where there's no basis to remove it, so retain in the plan. Creating public toilets, everyone likes that idea. Northern Wairoa Community Radio Trust. Now they've requested that the plan give some consideration to having a transmission site in the park. And there's two approaches we could take here. One is to as they would need to make their application to this committee, and you would need to consider it against Section 9. Alternatively, we could identify, well, without an application form, but we could identify a site for that, or that's an appropriate use, or look at Section 9 very closely and see if we want to make it easier to permit it or make it harder to permit it.
I think your last paragraph there was the key one. And that, if such a request was made for a committee, it would have to be a discretion of the council. If it depends on then how all the heritage cultural and landscape there. Visible town that completely gives the wrong impression of what we're trying to create this it's there, but I think it's got to be very clearly defined. So there's a lot of things that also got to go through before.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So when it comes to council discretion, because this is about license to occupy, that's yeah, I get it.
Section 9.
You're happy that happy with the plan as it does, and they would have to go through. And very good. Move on to views, ecology, archaeology, and other site values. 24, enhancing and maintaining views, particularly this is supported. Everyone supports maintaining the views, so that's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so on the concept plans, down by the bend in the road by the path site is it shows the area having some plantings on it, and it's something which the graphics designer has added in there. Someone was concerned about the height those trees could grow to. I'm suggesting that we can just remove those off the site plan. There's no, they're just a suggestion from the illustrator. They don't need to be on the plan.
Yeah.
Creation and use, number 26. I think area by the Rainbow Warrior Masts shown on the plan is supported, so that's through. Requested that pedestrian access something which we could add as an access, as an action. Otherwise, it's something which could form part of creating a new link through to Old Golf Course Road. We're happy to add it as an action to improve pedestrian access from Old Golf Course Road.
Yep. Okay, with that,
Improve the accessibility.
okay,
That then doesn't tie it to going to creating a new vehicle access.
It's at different points though, isn't it? Completely different place.
Yeah, I think currently we've got steps going down to Old Golf Course Road. We could create a and the same as, we can decide we can talk about where that pedestrian access would go, but we're putting it in the plan when we know we're talking about creating a bit of pedestrian access off Old Golf Course Road.
Right.
The request for a dog exercise area. This is something which is better addressed, officer recommendation, I suppose, better addressed under the Kaipara District Council policy on dogs and dog management bylaw, which was consulted on not that long ago, it's 2019. And that would require those to be amended if we were to decide to include a dog exercise area. So it's something which is, Dogs Park was already discussed as part of that process. I know there were a lot of concerns around the far side. So I suppose the officer recommendation or suggestion there is to leave it unchanged.
Yep.
29. This is the walking link between Park Road and Harding. Concerns about vandalism, people walking into the park and doing things. So it's a question of if we keep that access way open or if we close it to try and stop people going in there doing things they shouldn't be doing.
So has there been instances of vandalism?
Mara?
Currently, the road has, like vandalism. I think the aspect you need to think of is not just about you need to fire New Zealand, you get that there, fire ambulance, you get there with the RV. Not just people that are really out in the emergency, but really services are going to pick up and move down.
Right, this is just the pedestrian access to Park Road.
Just on steps going up from Park Road.
Steps going up from Park Road. So currently you can walk.
Many people know that you can know from there even. I was up here last week.
So I hesitate to give officer recommend I don't want to steer you, but having the ability for people in Mangawari, Davao, to be able to walk up there rather than 100% good linkage. A lot of the concern I think is coming also about the water meters located there, so those properties not wanting those vandalised, and that might be a different issue which we need to look at under water services. It's all around hope. Happy to leave that plan unchanged?
Well, it did seem to be more than one mention of water meters. So, I don't know what the risk is.
I've raised that as something to flag to our team. This is, if there was an infrastructure to, with the water services area, because, it looks like there's water from town supplies coming up to that point, coming to a number of meters and being piped individually over to Old Gold Course Road properties. Whether if that is the best layout or whether if those meters are suitably protected, but it's not a reserve management plan issue, that's a, that's something which they've got valid concerns in that respect. But, it's a question for you whether those concerns warrant closing that walking link.
I have a question whether the reason is about all is about the concept of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any vandalism occurring in water meters, and another way is like taking the water meters.
Yeah.
It's getting, I guess, very complicated by the time
Yeah.
with all these things around.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, actually. I was going to ask, does it really need to be part of the reserve management plan?
So you're happy to leave it out, so you're happy for that walking link to.
Out there, yeah.
The motto, Willie, leave it out.
Number 30 was opposition to the walking tracks shown running from the Lighthouse Function Centre to the Old Mount Wesley Cemetery due to concerns of vandalism and also the track steepness. And I've got here that the shown locations of these and other walking tracks are not correct. There is a mapping error that should be corrected in the final plan. Happy for that to be corrected in the final plan.
Happy with that?
Okay, number 31. So generally supported. Okay. Firstly, Disc Golf New Zealand, are you happy for that to be removed? Remove all mention of disc golf from the plan. Disc Golf New Zealand say that that site is too small. They're looking at other sites.
Yep.
And the mountain bike section. So the mountain bikes, we currently have, the plan is currently very supportive of further mountain bike tracks. We could tone that wording down a bit, or we can leave it unchanged, but we're currently very supportive of further mountain bike tracks. There was a little bit of oppositional concern received to that.
What are you suggesting, Mark? Leave it as is, or?
Well, it's up to you. We can tone the wording down a bit, so we can remain supportive of further mountain bike tracks, but not be as supportive. We're currently just make it that we're supportive. It's something which we can do there, but not be as strong on it. We could even, we could even go the other way and not support further expansion. It's up to you, but it's
cycling and crowd bike small sort of activity is on the rise. On the Radio Museum this morning about the resurrection of looking at lanes over 100 people. So very much up there. I think we've got to be minded about this and when it doesn't estimate your support, but it could be not supportive of saying we don't. I think it's pretty.
leave it unchanged. Tone it down. Leave it unchanged.
Leave it in as is.
As is, okay. $32. Okay. It's requested that the walking track be better marked. And more signage. We could add this as an action plan, but it's in line with the general direction of the plan already. We want to add it as a specific action.
I was looking for another sort of signage and that, but I actually agree. Add it to the action plan as an action. Oh, sorry.
For more signage.
For consultation for cordial discussion. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, just to, for more conversation about it, okay. Because we don't really want fencing, do we?
So I think that the fencing, that walk, and I think it's specific to to the walkway, and we're required for that. Generally, the plan and direction currently is remove all unnecessary fences and move towards a more open and park. So that direction remains. It's questionable if fencing gets through through this year. So and as an action, so but not fencing, and it's really about having more clearly formed paths. With the direction there seems to be more clearly formed paths and better wayfinding and signposting and pointing out historic features. There's a question balance around the one thing I'm worried about. So this is consistent with the direction already that area is a grass area for picnics. There's currently no bollards there, so there's a request that we add bollards. We want that as an action in the plan. It doesn't need to be an action plan for us to go out there and put bollards in, but we could add it as an action.
Every day, that we look at, and something and needed to do it, it needed to be done, otherwise they're liable for having an accident and being responsible.
Yeah, part of action plan. Yeah.
That's
We've actually had this in front of us in the past, haven't we? More than once.
the bollard conversation. All I can see in my head is posts being rammed into the ground. Is that the kind of bollard we're talking about?
It doesn't have to be. It can be.
Doubts.
Something sympathetic to the space, eh?
Yeah. We had to get an archaeological authority if we're going to do too much digging. There's,
The digging is what is worrying me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fire and Emergency New Zealand and their firefighting dam. So the suggestion I've got there is that council, we state in the plan, the council will work with BENS on how we best go about that dam meeting the standards. So they say it's a firefighting dam and it needs to meet the standards, enduring standards for a firefighting dam, and they offer to work with us on how we can best make that site meet the standards. I suggest the plan be reworded to say that we will work with them to better understand that. Is that acceptable?
Yep.
Absolutely. In a recreational area, I think we could have lots of visitors, children, etc. there. And we've got to start fencing it. And all that kind of aspect. A whole lot of things. I think all we really do with this plan is really going to be not make any commitment until we have it.
Okay, number 35, it was requested that provision be made for improving stormwater management at the old Mount Wesley Cemetery. So this is something which we could add as an action. We could keep it high level and say that we'll investigate and address the stormwater in that area. We don't actually have to include it in the plan to take action on that. It can also be just an operational issue. We could add it as an action to look at that.
Make it happen.
So what does it mean if we're going to include it in the plan? And so what's the high level side of it?
The high level, so rather than being specific and saying that we will address the, something in the submission is quite specific about what water is coming from where. We could be specific about how we will address that, but my suggestion would be that we will address, if we keep it high level, we will keep addressing. Right. We still need to send someone out there to really, like an engineer, to really investigate where is that water coming from, how much. So I wouldn't want to get too detailed, but we can add an action to address stormwater issues at the cemetery.
Robert, you happy with that? Carl?
Yep.
36. Management of the park should include more provision for maintenance. This was raised by several submitters. So maintenance of the park is outlined in level of service contracts. There's other places where we outline that. It's not something which we really put in a reserve management plan as saying this is the direction which we're heading.
Yep, support, yeah.
Okay. Private Heritage Machinery Incorporated objected their perimeter fences being removed. Got some explanation there in the wording around. You can leave the plan as it is, or you could amend the plan to say that there's fences are supported. You can do various things there. Some of the concerns we've heard around that is around people driving on the grass and driving irresponsibly on the grass. That can be addressed through bollards. Would be addressed through bollards if those fences were removed. There's concerns about security and having things stolen. There's two parts to that. One is locking the gates at night. The other is that you look at their license to occupy, they've got very rare provision to actually have a piece of the park fenced off and a hedge around it, and that is a sort of public excluded area where they can store pieces of machinery which are waiting for restoration. So by locating things there, or we've got shipping containers, to locking them up. Security. So there's ways in which to address the crank up days that they have, and they like to charge entry to the site, which they're permitted to do rightly under their license to occupy. They can charge entry for that, but they could do that with temporary fencing potentially, or through other means.
Thanks, Mark. And so you've made the comment here, in such case, this could be recognised in the plan and could be permitted to upgrade that the Heritage Machinery Club could be permitted to upgrade these fences to post and rail fences as they have previously expressed a desire to do so. So they've asked in the past.
So you're
to have
that.
Yeah.
In the future and to improve also about the overall visual appearance of the park. But it may well be that if we give some flexibility for the Heritage Machinery Museum to actually put in right if they want, and what the colour more the area of the park there, which in some areas.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is increase the time user friendly or significant part of the district. But all the potential, having an area on it, we can quickly be able to sort if the rest of the time will all be in sort of harmony. Whatever I do, should be very much in harmony with what we're trying to accomplish.
So if we leave the plan unchanged. Not a new issue, say, but it's yeah, the plan really just says remove unnecessary fences, so we could just leave it at that. Change. Number 38. It was requested that all cultures within the community be acknowledged and connected through the park. This is in line with the general direction of the draft plan and could be made clearer in the final plan. Would you like that made clearer in the final plan? I'd like to leave the plan as it stands.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, we're actually promoting it in those posts out the front of the whare, the museum. So, and it might, if it's not clear enough on the plan, Yeah, support it.
Make it clear, was it?
Well, you're right. I think to be fair, that the overall direction of what we wanted to try and do in terms of developing the and actually give us the right direction to make maybe open for high level of both visibility and unrestricted space. Opposed to making that a little clearer.
Yeah. Karen?
Okay, and that is the last one.
Probably, obviously, sorry.
We can now vote on the resolution. We only need to vote that we receive the direction given.
Oh, right. Yeah, thanks. Just to update members of the committee, Matua Rex has left, so I'm sitting in as chair for the present. And we actually do have a resolution, a motion in front of us. And we do have a mover, Karen and Peter. Second, that the Poutua-Tarangi Joint Committee and Harding Park Committee, direct staff to amend the draft Poutua-Tarangi Harding Park and Old Mount Wesley Cemetery Reserve Management Plan in accordance with the direction given at this meeting. And that's it. So all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. Any abstentions? Abstentions? No. Carried. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Trace, is there anything further? So,
Thank you.
Mark, thanks very much for taking us through that. And thanks for the work behind the scenes, actually, to get this to where it is. And pass on our thanks to your staff and the like. Peter, is there anything further you want to talk about?
No, the only thing I would want to talk about is meeting that was, although we have one.
We have an
more that we
extraordinary
look
coming.
at these and be, okay. That one, I think it's-
Not agreed.
We're waiting on the next one.
Extraordinary meeting?
So through the chair, we have I believe it's the 6th of September extraordinary meeting.
What's the date again, so?
I believe it's 6th of September. And that's the extraordinary meeting to bring this plan back for the minutes of that day. And for you to approve it, submit it to council and a various board.
Yeah, there's a bit of,
legislative different stones we have to make with that.
there's literally, yeah, basically it goes, you will adopt it. Basically it goes,
Okay, cool.
It's a very quick way to explain that. So there's a lot of bureaucracy behind all that, but I'll talk through that and put it in writing for you with the agenda for that meeting.
And the likelihood of venue is probably back at the Lighthouse.
Yeah, that to him in the council.
Oh,
This
okay.
meeting, the next extraordinary will be here or online.
Oh, okay.
After then, I can't really.
Okay, cool. Karen, anything further from you?
No, nothing. Just
Best of luck.
thanks.
We don't see, Rob, anything from you? All right, with that, I'll just close our hui. Yeah, e noi tātou, let us pray. Ke tau, ke tata katoa tāta, whao tata ariki a ihu karaite me tā aroha to atua. Me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu ake, amene.
Oh, yeah.